Hallo zusammen and welcome! Okay, let's just dive right into this. You're tuning in to today's Explainer with Deutschlingo, your place for German online lessons. I'm your host, a German native speaker, but I'm actually based right now in the incredible city of Tokyo. And you know, living here in Japan, a culture that is just so globally famous for its deeply ingrained politeness, it constantly reminds me of how blunt and direct German can feel to someone learning the language. If you're learning German, you've probably hit that wall, right? The grammar suddenly feels like this massive, intricate puzzle. You learn the basic rules, you feel super confident, and then boom, the language throws a curveball that completely scrambles the word order you worked so hard to memorize. Well, today we are tackling one of the most famous, and honestly, one of the most absolutely crucial structural puzzles in the German language. Die indirekte Frage, or the indirect question. Grab your mental notepad because by the end of this deep dive, you're going to sound incredibly natural, polite, and fluent. Oh, and real quick, if you want to master topics exactly like this, here at Deutschlingo we offer online German lessons for all levels for a reasonable fee. You can book your free trial lesson now using the info we provide. But for now, let's get into the grammar. So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, direct versus indirect questions. Second, structuring with question words. Third, the magic of ob. Fourth, period or question mark. And finally, when to actually use them. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, direct versus indirect questions. I want you to take a quick second and think about how you currently ask questions in German. Seriously, picture yourself stopping a stranger on the street in Berlin to ask for directions, or checking into a hotel in Munich after a super long flight. How are you asking for information? I ask this because, well, very often, beginner German can sound a little bit like a police interrogation. You're just directly demanding information, right? Where is the train station? What is your name? How old are you? When we use basic direct questions, we're really prioritizing getting the information quickly over sounding polite or conversational. And hey, it's not necessarily wrong. Germans definitely value directness. But if you want to sound like a polite, cultured hotel guest rather than a detective shining a bright light in someone's face, we need to evolve how we ask for things. It's all about smoothing out those rough edges. Let's just do a quick review of these familiar direct questions, which are known in German as the direkte Frage. We have Wie heißt du, Wo wohnst du, and Hast du Kinder? I want you to practice with me for a second. Say them out loud wherever you are right now. Wie heißt du? Wo wohnst du? Hast du Kinder? Awesome. Now, I want you to notice the core architectural rule of basic German grammar happening right here. The conjugated verb sits firmly in the second position for question word questions, or the very first position for yes-no questions. Wie heißt du? The verb is king right up front. You've known this since day one of learning German. It's the foundation. But what actually happens when we want to soften this demanding tone and sound just a bit more sophisticated? Listen to the difference between these two approaches. A direct question asks pretty bluntly, Wo ist die Post? Where is the post office? Boom, direct to the point. But an indirect question transforms this into a highly sophisticated statement. Ich möchte wissen, wo die Post ist. I would like to know where the post office is. Notice what happened there? We didn't just ask a question, we actually made a statement that contains a hidden question inside of it. This is the absolute essence of an indirect question. It's a two-part sentence. You start with a polite opener, and then you follow it up with the information you seek. It immediately, and I mean instantly, elevates your German from a beginner level to a much more native-sounding conversational flow. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, structuring with question words, or W-Fragen. So how do we actually build this two-part sentence without completely losing our minds over the word order? Well, we have to understand the triggers. Take a mental screenshot of these foundational main clauses, your Hauptsatz. These are the phrases that trigger the indirect structure, and you're going to use these all the time. Ich möchte wissen, I would like to know. Ich frage mich, I wonder, literally, I ask myself. Ich habe vergessen, I forgot. Ich habe keine Ahnung, I have no idea. And the ultra-polite Können Sie mir sagen? Can you tell me? By starting your sentence with one of these, you're signaling to the listener, and honestly to your own brain, that an indirect question is coming. In my Deutschlingo online lessons, these are the exact phrases I drill constantly with my students. Why? Because once these become muscle memory, the rest of the sentence just falls right into place. Let's gamify this structure a bit. Think of it like you're a detective solving a puzzle. Here is the exact anatomy of an indirect question broken down into 4 strict steps. Step 1, the main clause. We just learned these. Let's use Ich möchte wissen. Step 2, the connector. Because our original question was, where is the post office, our connector is just the question word itself, wo. Step 3, the subject. What are we asking about? We're asking about die Post. And finally, step 4, pay super close attention here because this is the golden rule of German subordinate clauses. The conjugated verb is thrown to the very end of the sentence. Ist. So, putting it all together slowly. Ich möchte wissen, wo die Post ist. The verb gets pushed all the way to the back wall of the sentence. Try saying that out loud. Ich möchte wissen, wo die Post ist. You can literally feel the verb anchoring the end of your thought, right? Now let's see what happens with slightly more complex sentences, particularly when we introduce a modal or a helping verb. A direct question might be, wie lernt man eine neue Sprache? How does one learn a new language? But let's say you add the helping verb kann, meaning can. The direct question becomes, wie kann man eine neue Sprache lernen? How can one learn a new language? When we make this indirect, we use our trigger. Ich frage mich, I wonder. Then we use wie as the bridge connecting the 2 clauses. This bridge forces the conjugated verb, in this case, kann, all the way past absolutely everything else, right to the period. Ich frage mich, wie man eine neue Sprache lernen kann. It takes some practice, for sure. And for beginners, modal verbs can definitely feel tricky. But once you feel that rhythm of kicking that conjugated verb to the very end, it truly becomes second nature. Now let's jump into section 3, the magic of ob. So you might be wondering, what if the question we want to soften doesn't actually have a question word at all? What if it's just a simple yes or no question? Well, that's where we need a special tool. We need the magic word up. Up is a connector specifically used for transforming yes/no decision questions into indirect questions. It translates best to whether or if in English. But hey, a quick warning here, and this is a scenario I see literally all the time with my English-speaking students. They constantly try to use the German word wenn here because then also means if. But in English, we use if for conditions like, if it rains, I will stay inside. And we also use it for uncertainty, like, I don't know if he is coming. In German, ob is strictly for that second scenario, the uncertainty. I don't know whether he is coming. You absolutely must use up when you're dealing with a yes/no unknown. Imagine you're checking into a hotel. You could just walk right up to the front desk and ask the direct yes/no question, Haben Sie ein Zimmer frei? Do you have a room free? Notice there's no question word here like who, what, or where. It just starts immediately with a verb haben. So how do we connect our introductory phrase to this? Ob steps in to act as the magical bridge. Ich möchte wissen, ob Sie ein Zimmer frei haben. I would like to know whether you have a free room. And just like before, that connector word ob dictates the grammar and kicks the conjugated verb haben to the very end of the sentence. Say it with me to get the feel of it. Ich möchte wissen, ob Sie ein Zimmer frei haben. Ah, so much more polite, isn't it? It's really vital to contrast ob with another famous connector, das. Das means that. You use das when you are stating a known fact. It anchors the sentence in reality. Ich weiß, dass kommt. I know that he is coming. The fact is established, it's firmly anchored down. But if there's a question mark in your mind, if the answer is floating up in the air like a feather as an unknown variable, you must use ob. Ich weiß nicht, ob kommt. I don't know whether he is coming. Fact versus uncertainty. Anchor versus feather. Remember this distinction, and I promise you'll avoid one of the most common mistakes intermediate German learners make.
All right, let's look at section 4, period or question arc. We're going to look closely at a grammatical trap that catches almost everyone off guard. I really want you to focus here. What punctuation mark actually goes at the end of an indirect question? A period or a question mark? Well, the answer is it depends entirely on the first word of your sentence. The punctuation at the end of the whole thing is dictated completely by the main clause, not the subordinate clause at the end. Take the phrase, Ich möchte wissen, wann der Film beginnt. Our main clause is Ich möchte wissen. Ich is a pronoun. This is a statement. I would like to know. Even though it contains the question, when does the film begin, the sentence as a whole is a declarative statement. Therefore, it ends in a period. Listen to the intonation. Ich möchte wissen, wann der Film beginnt. Now take the phrase, Können Sie mir sagen, wann der Film beginnt? Here, our main clause starts with können, a verb. Can you tell me? Because the main clause is an actual asking question, the entire sentence ends with a question mark, and your voice rises slightly at the end. Können Sie mir sagen, wann der Film beginnt? Always check your main clause to determine your punctuation and your vocal intonation. Finally, section 5, when to use them.
We've spent a lot of time on the mechanics, the word order, the punctuation, but honestly, grammar is only useful if you know when to deploy it in real life to actually connect with people. These are your real-world superpowers. First and foremost, Höflichkeit, or politeness. Using indirect questions softens the blow of inquiries. You go from sounding demanding to sounding considerate, which is exactly what you want when checking into a hotel or asking a stranger for directions. Secondly, formal interactions. If you're speaking to your boss, a customer service rep, or anyone you use the formal Z with, indirect questions are your absolute best friend. And thirdly, narration. You can use these structures to express internal states without expecting an answer from anyone. You can simply say, Ich habe vergessen, wann der Zug abfährt. I forgot when the train leaves. Or, Ich habe keine Ahnung, ob heute kommt. I have no idea if he's coming today. You're narrating your own thoughts smoothly and natively. Mastering these nuances is exactly what we focus on at Deutschlingo. So, if you want to practice these real-world superpowers with a native speaker, be sure to book a trial lesson with us. It really is the best way to move these concepts out of your notebook and into your active vocabulary. And that wraps up today's deep dive explainer with Deutschlingo. We've covered the transition from direct interrogation to polite inquiry, we've mastered those Fragen bridges, we've unlocked the magic of ob, and we totally solved the punctuation puzzle. So, now that you have these grammatical tools to sound incredibly polite and fluent, what is the very first indirect question you are going to ask in German? Seriously, think of a real-life situation you might face tomorrow and formulate it in your head right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this exploration of German grammar. Remember, I'm based right here in Tokyo, and our Deutschlingo online lessons are available for all levels for a reasonable fee. So book your free trial lesson now. Keep practicing that verb placement, and I'll see you in the next explainer.